Ever feel like you want to grasp something truly meaningful? Find those insights that really stick with you, but without drowning in a sea of information.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all crave those aha moments where something clicks and you just get it.
Exactly. That's what we're all about here. Today, we're diving deep into the idea of spiritual gifts, those unique ways, well, some might say, the divine expresses itself through us. We're using the 17 spiritual gifts, discovering your divine talents from the Spiritual Seek as our guide.
So we're not talking about your knack for baking or your killer tennis serve.
Right, it's not just talents or skills we pick up along the way.
This is about something deeper, more intrinsic to who we are.
Okay, so like a blueprint for our spiritual selves.
You could say that. The article suggests these gifts are the channels for genuine connection and meaningful contribution to the world.
Interesting. And they've identified 17 of these gifts.
That's right, 17 distinct ways these spiritual energies manifest.
17. That's quite a lot. So our mission today is to break down these spiritual gifts, pull out the most fascinating bits, and give everyone listening a clear understanding without overwhelming them.
Exactly. Think of it as a shortcut to understanding this whole concept of divine talents.
Sounds good to me. Now, before we get into the specifics of each gift, let's lay some groundwork. How does the article explain these gifts in a broader sense?
Well, it posits that these gifts are, like I said, channels for authentic connection and meaningful contribution.
Right.
And it mentions this thing called a spiritual personality profile as the source for these 17 gifts.
Okay, a spiritual personality profile. What's that all about?
Think of it like understanding your spiritual DNA, your inherent spiritual leanings and strengths.
Interesting. So it's like these gifts aren't random. They're part of our spiritual makeup.
Exactly. Now, the article doesn't dive deep into how this profile is determined, but it suggests that these gifts are discernible aspects of our being.
Okay, so there's a system to it. We're not just making this up as we go along.
No, not at all. There's a framework here.
Great. Now, I'm ready to dive into some of these gifts. Where should we start?
Well, why don't we start with wisdom, one of the gifts the article highlights.
Wisdom. Okay, that's a big one. But isn't wisdom just about being intelligent?
That's where it gets interesting. The article makes a clear distinction between wisdom and intelligence.
Okay, so enlighten me. What's the difference?
Think of it like this. Intelligence is about accumulating knowledge and information, while wisdom is about applying that knowledge with understanding and insight.
So wisdom is more about how you use knowledge, not just how much you have.
Precisely. It's about seeing the deeper meaning, understanding the interconnectedness of things, and making choices that align with that understanding.
That makes sense. It's like someone can be really book smart, but still lack wisdom.
Exactly. The article uses the classic story of King Solomon to illustrate this.
Oh, right. The one where he asked for wisdom instead of wealth or power.
Yeah. And remember his famous judgment about the two women claiming the same baby?
Oh, yeah. He threatened to cut the baby in half.
Right, but it was a test, a way to reveal the true mother through her compassion and willingness to sacrifice.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful example of wisdom in action.
It is. He used his insight into human nature to reach a just and compassionate resolution.
So it's not just about knowing the law, it's about understanding the human heart as well.
Exactly. And the article emphasizes that wisdom isn't something you achieve overnight.
Oh yeah, they quoted Einstein, didn't they?
They did. He said, wisdom is not a product of schooling, but of the lifelong attempt to acquire it.
So it's a journey, not a destination.
Precisely. It's about constantly seeking understanding, learning from experience, and growing in our ability to apply that knowledge wisely.
Makes sense. Okay, that was a great deep dive into wisdom. What other gifts should we explore?
How about leadership?
Leadership. Okay, now that's an interesting one. But isn't leadership just about, well, being in charge?
That's the common perception, but the article draws a distinction between traditional leadership and what it calls spiritual leadership.
Okay, so what makes spiritual leadership different?
It's less about authority and control and more about inspiring others towards a shared vision.
So it's about influence rather than power.
Exactly. Spiritual leaders motivate through authenticity, integrity, and a deep connection with their followers.
Sounds like they're leading by example, not by force.
Precisely. The article points to figures like Moses and the Prophet Muhammad as examples.
Okay, so how do they embody this idea of spiritual leadership?
Well, Moses led the Israelites out of slavery, not just by giving orders, but by connecting them to their spiritual identity and giving them hope for a better future.
Right, he wasn't just a political leader, he was a spiritual guide.
Exactly. And the Prophet Muhammad united diverse tribes under a shared faith, creating a community based on shared values and beliefs.
Wow, so they both led through inspiration and shared purpose.
Precisely. They tapped into something deeper than just personal ambition or political power.
The article had that great quote from Lao Tzu about leadership.
Oh, yes. It says, "A leader is best when people barely know he exists. When his work is done, his aim fulfilled, they will say, 'We did it ourselves.'"
Powerful stuff. It's like the true mark of a spiritual leader is empowering others to reach their full potential.
Exactly. It's about fostering a sense of collective ownership and shared responsibility.
Okay, I'm getting a much clearer sense of what they mean by spiritual leadership. What's next on our list of gifts?
How about we explore creativity?
Creativity. All right, that's one I can definitely relate to. But how is creativity a spiritual gift? Isn't it more about talent and skill?
It is, in part, but the article presents a fascinating perspective on creativity as a conduit for divine inspiration.
Oh, so it's about channeling something bigger than ourselves through our creative endeavors.
Exactly. It suggests that we tap into a deeper source, a wellspring of inspiration, when we engage in creative acts.
That makes sense. It's like when you're in that flow state and the ideas just seem to pour out of you.
Exactly. And the article uses some interesting examples to illustrate this idea, like the creation narrative in Genesis.
Oh, right, where God creates the world out of nothing.
Yes. It positions creation as a fundamental aspect of the divine, suggesting an inherent link between the spiritual and the creative impulse.
That's a really interesting connection.
And then there's Michelangelo's perspective on sculpture.
He was the one who said the sculptures were already in the marble, right?
Precisely. He saw his role as revealing what was already present, not inventing something new. It aligns with this idea of tapping into a deeper source of inspiration.
Wow, that's a beautiful way to think about it.
It is. And they also talk about medieval Islamic architecture.
I'm curious about that. How does architecture fit into this understanding of spiritual creativity?
Well, think about the intricate geometric patterns found in mosques and palaces from that era. They weren't just decorative, they were expressions of theological concepts.
Oh, I see. So the creativity was infused with spiritual meaning.
Exactly. They were embodying spiritual truths through artistic expression, even without depicting literal figures.
That's fascinating. And there's that quote from Julia Cameron that really resonates with me. Creativity is God's gift to us. Using our creativity is our gift back to God.
It beautifully captures the idea of a reciprocal relationship between the divine and our creative expression. It's like we're engaging in a sacred exchange.
Okay, I'm feeling really inspired now.
Yeah.
Creativity is a spiritual gift. That's a powerful concept. What other gifts are we going to explore?
Well, let's shift gears a bit and talk about empathy.
Empathy. That's a big one, especially these days. But isn't empathy just about being nice and caring?
It's certainly part of it, but the article digs deeper, drawing a distinction between empathy and sympathy.
Oh, okay. What's the difference? I always get those two mixed up.
Sympathy is more about feeling for someone, offering pity or concern from a distance. Empathy, on the other hand, is about feeling with someone, stepping into their shoes and truly understanding their emotional experience.
So empathy is more about connection and understanding, while sympathy is more about acknowledging someone's pain.
Precisely. It's about resonating with their emotions, feeling what they're feeling, while still maintaining your own sense of self.
That makes sense. It's like with sympathy, you're standing on the shore watching someone struggle in the water, but with empathy, you're jumping in and swimming alongside them.
That's a great analogy. And the article uses the example of Jesus at Lazarus' tomb to illustrate this.
Oh, right. He wept, even though he knew he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead.
Exactly. It shows a profound capacity to connect with and share in the grief of others, even in the face of his own divine knowledge.
It's like his empathy transcended the situation. He was fully present with their pain.
Precisely. And the article also mentions the Buddhist practice of compassion meditation.
Oh, yes. What is that all about?
It's a deliberate practice of cultivating empathy, of intentionally generating feelings of compassion and extending them outwards to all beings.
So it's like training your empathy muscles, making it a conscious effort rather than just a spontaneous feeling.
Exactly. And that's a key point. Empathy is a skill we can develop and strengthen through practice.
That's encouraging. It means we can all become more empathetic, even if it doesn't come naturally to us.
Absolutely. And that ties in beautifully with Maya Angelou's quote. "I've learned that people will forget what you said, People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Wow, that's so true. It's the emotional impact that truly resonates and stays with us.
Empathy creates that lasting impact because it addresses our fundamental need to be seen, understood, and validated on an emotional level.
Makes sense. Okay, empathy is a powerful gift indeed. Let's move on to the last gift we're going to explore today, insight.
Insight. All right, another intriguing one. What does the article say about this gift?
Well, it describes insight as the ability to see beyond the surface, to perceive deeper truths and connections that might not be obvious to everyone.
So it's like having that aha moment, that flash of understanding that cuts through confusion and sheds light on a situation.
Exactly. It's about getting to the heart of a matter, seeing the patterns, and understanding the underlying dynamics at play.
And the article points to the Hebrew prophets as examples of individuals with this gift of insight.
Oh, right. Those figures who received divine messages and interpreted the significance of historical events.
Precisely. They were able to perceive a deeper spiritual meaning behind what was happening in the world around them.
So they were seeing things from a different perspective, a higher vantage point, if you will.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about predicting the future, it was about understanding the underlying spiritual forces at work.
That's a pretty amazing ability. And they also mentioned Satori in Zen Buddhism. How did that relate to insight?
Satori is described as a moment of sudden awakening, a flash of insight that leads to a profound shift in perception. It's like all the pieces suddenly fall into place and you see reality in a new light.
Wow, sounds like a life-changing experience.
It can be, and it highlights the transformative power of insight.
Makes sense. The article also quoted Marianne Moore. The function of insight is to deliver us from abstraction.
That's a great one. It means insight brings clarity and helps us ground our understanding in concrete reality.
So it's not just about having abstract knowledge. It's about applying that knowledge in a meaningful way.
Precisely. Insight bridges the gap between theory and practice, between the head and the heart.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground here. We've explored wisdom, leadership, creativity, empathy, and insight.
We have, and those are just a few of the 17 gifts identified in the article.
Right, but even just these 5 give us a lot to think about. And one thing that struck me is that these gifts don't seem to operate in isolation. There's an interplay between them, right?
Absolutely. That's a key point the article emphasizes. These gifts often work in concert, complementing and enhancing each other.
So it's like a symphony, with each instrument playing its part to create a harmonious whole.
That's a beautiful analogy. For example, someone with a strong visionary gift might need the gift of teaching to communicate that vision effectively.
Or a leader might rely on the gift of discernment to make wise decisions.
Precisely. The gifts work together to create a synergy, a collective power greater than the sum of its parts.
And the article talks about how this synergy is especially potent within communities.
Yes. When a community recognizes and values the diverse gifts of its members, it can achieve amazing things.
Right, it's like everyone brings their unique strengths to the table, and together they can address a wider range of needs and opportunities.
Exactly. It creates a more resilient and adaptable community as a whole.
Okay, so we've talked about what these gifts are and how they work together. But is there anything we could do to cultivate these gifts? Or are we just stuck with what we're born with?
That's another great point the article addresses. It suggests that these gifts can be nurtured and developed.
Oh, that's encouraging. So we're not just passive recipients. We can actively engage with and cultivate these gifts.
Precisely. It encourages us to view them as muscles we can strengthen through practice and intention.
So what are some ways we can do that?
The article suggests several approaches. Studying the lives of those who exemplify these gifts, finding mentors who can guide us, actively practicing the gifts we feel drawn to, embracing challenges as opportunities for growth.
Okay, so it's about being proactive, seeking out opportunities to learn and grow.
Exactly. It also mentions the importance of developing complementary gifts, engaging in self-reflection, and being part of communities where our gifts can be used and appreciated.
Wow, those are some great practical tips. It sounds like cultivating these gifts is an ongoing journey, a process of continual growth and discovery.
It is, and it's a journey well worth taking.
I agree. And speaking of journeys, the article also points out that these gifts aren't static. They can evolve throughout our lives.
Right. Our gifts are not set in stone. They might become more or less prominent at different stages, depending on our experiences, growth, and even the needs of the world around us.
So it's a dynamic process, a constant unfolding of our spiritual potential.
Precisely. It's all part of our unique and ever-evolving spiritual journey.
Okay, so let's bring it all together. What's the key takeaway from all this?
I think the core idea is that these spiritual gifts, as outlined in this article, offer a profound framework for understanding our unique strengths and contributions to the world.
Right, they're not just about personal fulfillment. They're about how we connect with something larger and contribute to something greater than ourselves.
Exactly. It's about recognizing and harnessing the divine energy that flows through us.
Powerful stuff. So as you reflect on everything we've discussed, consider this. What threads or inclinations resonate most strongly with you? What natural abilities or passions might align with these gifts?
Yeah, and how might exploring and cultivating these aspects enrich your understanding of yourself and your unique way of contributing to the world?
It's a great question to ponder. We've only scratched the surface today, focusing on 5 of the 17 gifts.
That's right. There are many others to explore, like service, encouragement, or discernment. Each one offers a unique perspective on how we connect and contribute.
So if any of this has sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to dive deeper into the source material and see what resonates with you. You might be surprised at what you discover.
Absolutely. It's an invitation to explore the richness and depth of your own spiritual potential.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into spiritual gifts. We hope it's given you some food for thought and inspiration for your own journey.
Until next time, keep exploring and keep shining.